There's a thick, wandering bundle of nerve fibers running directly from the base of your brain, straight through your heart, and deep into your digestive system. It is called the vagus nerve, and it acts as the master emergency brake for your entire biology. Most people spend their lives believing that a restless mind is purely a psychological problem. They think that if they just try hard enough to clear their head, their body will eventually calm down. But human anatomy operates in the exact opposite direction. Your brain does not dictate your safety. Your physical body dictates it to your brain. You have likely spent years feeling deeply ashamed that you cannot simply relax like a normal person. You feel like you are failing a basic human task. But you are not failing. You are just trying to speak a rational language to an ancient, hypervigilant sentry that only understands raw physical data. Today, we are going completely tactical. I'm going to walk you through the exact step-by-step neurological backdoor required to bypass your nighttime defense system. We are going to use advanced grounding techniques and precise diaphragmatic pacing to manually shut down the alarm without your brain ever realizing it. What follows is the part most people spend their entire lives desperately searching for. Phase number 7 is the surrender paradox. Most people approach the night like a brutal war they have to win. You get into bed, look at the glowing clock on the nightstand, and immediately start doing the mental math. You calculate exactly how many hours of rest you will get if you manage to fall asleep right this very second. You put a massive, heavy demand on your own biology. You lie there, staring into the blackness, feeling a quiet rage toward your own body for refusing to shut down. You feel entirely betrayed by your own anatomy. But this creates a devastating physiological irony. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more your nervous system registers your intense effort as a state of absolute emergency. To a brain that has navigated prolonged periods of intense stress, chronic adversity, or heavy daily pressure, the act of forced surrender feels exactly like an ambush. You're demanding that your internal guard dog drop its weapon while the alarm is still blaring loudly in the background. Clinical psychologists refer to this as relaxation-induced anxiety. The very first step of the neurological backdoor requires you to do something that feels incredibly wrong. You have to completely abandon the goal of sleeping. You lie down and you silently give yourself absolute, unconditional permission to stay awake for the entire night. You tell your nervous system that you are just resting your bones, and if the mind wants to stay vigilant, it is entirely free to do so. By intentionally removing the heavy pressure to perform the act of sleeping, you instantly neutralize the performance anxiety that fuels your adrenaline. You are taking the tactical high ground by refusing to fight the sentry. You stop treating the mattress as a battlefield. You are proving to the amygdala that there is no crisis to solve here. But here is where it gets strange. Phase number 6 is the gravity anchor. You're lying in the dark, and suddenly your mind transports you to a terrifying scenario that might happen next Tuesday. You're completely detached from your physical surroundings, floating entirely in a highly exhausting mental simulation. Traditional advice tells you to just notice the bed and ground yourself, but a hypervigilant brain requires much heavier physical proof to pull it out of a cognitive spiral. We call this advanced grounding through the gravity anchor. A stressed brain is essentially a time-traveling machine. It abandons the present moment to live in the imagined disasters of tomorrow. To hack this, you must use gravity. Gravity is the single most relentless, undeniable physical force in the universe, yet we spend our entire waking lives completely ignoring it. When you're trapped in a catastrophic rehearsal at 2 a.m, you must manually force your brain to calculate physical mass. Do not just lightly notice the mattress. Shift 100% of your cognitive processing power to the exact boundary line where the skin of your heels meets the fabric of the sheets. Feel the sheer, dense weight of your own heel bones pressing downward into the earth. Move your attention slowly to your hips. Notice how the mattress physically pushes back against your mass. Your inner ear contains a complex vestibular system that constantly monitors your physical balance in space. Anxiety often mimics the biological sensation of falling through the air without a parachute. By forcing your brain to process the intense, heavy sensation of gravity, you are sending a massive wave of sensory data straight up your spinal cord. You are giving your nervous system definitive, physical proof that you are firmly tethered to a solid surface. You are not falling, you are securely held. It is impossible for your brain to maintain a high-definition anxiety loop about tomorrow while simultaneously calculating the exact gravitational pull on your spine right now. You are starving the anxiety of its processing power. And this is exactly why what I'm about to tell you makes no sense until it does. Phase number 5 is the somatic decoy. Think of your physical tension like a tightly coiled spring inside a heavy mechanical clock. In our last session, we identified this as your somatic armor. Your jaw is locked tight. Your shoulders are frozen near your ears. Your hands are invisible fists. When you realize how incredibly tense you are, your immediate instinct is to command your muscles to relax. You tell your shoulders to drop. But 5 minutes later, you realize they have crept right back up to defend your neck. A stressed nervous system entirely ignores the verbal command to relax because it fundamentally believes the physical bracing is the only thing keeping you safe from an impending impact. In trauma psychology, this physical bracing is known to be deeply intertwined with your emotional memory. The fascia and the muscle tissue keep a literal physical score of your stress. To hack this, you have to use a somatic decoy. You cannot ask the muscle to let go peacefully. You have to trick the guard dog by giving it a specific, extreme physical job to do. While you are heavily anchored by gravity, I want you to intentionally tense the muscles in your feet as hard as you possibly can. Curl your toes downward. Hold that intense, uncomfortable physical tension for 3 agonizing seconds. Then, let it go completely. Let your feet fall entirely dead. Move up to your legs. Flex your thigh muscles violently. Hold the tension. Then release it. Make tight, painful fists with your hands. Hold them until they shake slightly. Let them drop open. Stressed biology naturally understands the stark, undeniable contrast between extreme tension and sudden release. By intentionally manufacturing tension and then voluntarily dropping it, you are bypassing the conscious resistance. You are giving the nervous system permission to drop the armor without triggering the alarm. You are speaking the language of physical contrast, proving that you control the muscles, not the anxiety. What comes next is the part that tends to make people deeply uncomfortable, simply because it is far too accurate. Phase number 4 is the alveolar reset. Have you ever felt a tight, invisible band wrapped tightly around your chest when you lie in the dark, making it feel almost impossible to take a deeply satisfying breath? This is not a figment of your imagination. It is a severe chemical imbalance happening directly inside your lungs. When you are locked in a state of chronic stress, your breathing becomes incredibly shallow and rapid. Because of this shallow breathing, the tiny microscopic air, sacs deep inside your lungs called alveoli, completely collapse and deflate. When they collapse, carbon dioxide rapidly builds up in your bloodstream. Your primitive brain stem detects this rising carbon dioxide and strictly interprets it as literal suffocation. It triggers a massive claustrophobic panic response. You cannot sleep because your blood chemistry is literally screaming that you are running out of air. Standard deep breathing does not fix this. To pop those tiny sacs back open and offload the panic gas, we have to execute a highly specific mechanical action. Clinical neurobiologists call this the physiological sigh. It is the most powerful, rapid method for lowering autonomic arousal ever discovered in human anatomy. You take a deep, sharp inhale through your nose. Then, right at the very top of that breath, before you exhale, you take a second, smaller, sharper inhale to completely top off your lung capacity. That second, sharp breath is the mechanical key. It forces the collapsed alveoli to violently snap open. Then, you release all of the air with one long, heavy, audible sigh out through your mouth. You do this exact pattern just 3 times. Within 60 seconds, the carbon dioxide is entirely expelled from your system. The chemical trigger for panic is entirely neutralized. The tight band around your chest dissolves into nothing. And once I tell you what clinical researchers found about this next phase, you will not look at yourself the same way. Phase number 3 is the vagal override. This is where the diaphragmatic pacing officially begins. This is the absolute core of the neurological backdoor. Your heart and your lungs are locked in a continuous, high-speed biological conversation. When you inhale, your diaphragm moves down, your heart gets slightly larger, and the blood moves through it more slowly. To compensate and keep the blood pressure up, your brain sends a rapid signal to your heart to beat faster. When you exhale, the diaphragm moves up, the heart gets smaller, and the brain tells the heart to significantly slow down. Anxious people constantly take quick, shallow breaths, meaning they are perpetually hitting the biological gas pedal. To pull the emergency brake, you must manipulate this exact heart-lung conversation using the vagus nerve. Place one hand flat on your chest and the other directly on your bare stomach. When you breathe, the top hand must not move. All the physical movement must happen under the bottom hand. You're going to inhale quietly through your nose for a slow count of 4 seconds, letting your stomach rise like a heavy balloon. You will gently hold that air for a count of 2 seconds, and then you will exhale through your mouth, making your lips very small, like you're blowing through a tiny straw, for an agonizingly slow count of 8 seconds. The absolute magic of this protocol is hidden entirely in that extended exhale. Clinical studies prove that making your exhale exactly twice as long as your inhale is the specific biological trigger code for the vagus nerve. The nerve senses the slowing heart rate. It detects the deep pressure of the diaphragm. It instantly secretes a heavy neurotransmitter called acetylcholine directly into your bloodstream. Acetylcholine is a natural tranquilizer. It forcibly lowers your blood pressure and physically commands the amygdala to shut down. You are literally injecting a biological sedative into your own system using nothing but air pressure. Most people think this specific biological mechanism is just a minor mental distraction. They have it completely backwards. Phase number 2 is the oculomotor shift. Even with your eyes completely closed in the darkroom, you are still actively looking for danger. Your eyelids are tightly shut, but your physical eyeballs are constantly darting around, making tiny, rapid micro-movements under the skin. You are visually scanning the blackness for the terrifying scenarios your brain is currently inventing. Modern neuroscientists have discovered a massive, direct superhighway connecting the physical movement of your eyes to the fear center of your brain. When your eyes dart rapidly behind your lids, it sends a mechanical signal to your brainstem that you are actively tracking a moving threat. Your brain assumes a predator is pacing back and forth in the room. This is exactly why simply closing your eyes often makes your anxiety spike higher. It removes your visual data, but keeps your threat tracking aggressively engaged. To hack this system and completely seal the neurological backdoor, you have to physically paralyze the optic threat scanner. While you are running the vagal breathing pattern, I want you to keep your eyes closed, but intentionally lock your gaze straight ahead. Do not look around the dark. Fix your internal vision on one single invisible point straight in front of you. Then, gently expand your awareness to your far peripheral vision. Imagine you are trying to see the extreme left and extreme right corners of the room at the exact same time, all while your eyes remain locked dead center. We call this panoramic vision. In the wild, mammals only use panoramic vision when they are completely safe, resting and grazing in an open field. By manually widening your visual field behind closed lids, you are sending a massive, undeniable biological signal of absolute safety. You are physically proving to the sentry that nothing is attacking you. The guard dog receives this optical signal, looks at the wide, calm horizon, and finally lowers its head. What follows is the profound realization that explains everything. Phase number 1 is the cognitive pivot. Here is the absolute, unfiltered truth about what will happen when you try this protocol tonight. Around the 5th or 6th cycle of your diaphragmatic breathing, your mind is going to violently rebel. The sentry is going to realize that the physical body is actively shutting down the alarm system, and it will panic. It will suddenly throw a massive, highly distressing thought directly across your mental screen. It will remind you of a deep, unhealed wound. It will project a terrifying image of your financial future. It will try to convince you that if you relax now, you will lose control of your entire life. It will scream at you that this breathing exercise is stupid and is not working fast enough. When this happens, do not get angry, do not fight the intrusive thought. Fighting the thought proves to the sentry that the thought is a real physical threat that requires a fresh shot of adrenaline. Instead, you're going to use the cognitive pivot. When the loud thought hits, you acknowledge it with utter cold neutrality. You treat the thought like a meaningless piece of debris floating down a dark river. You simply observe it, and then you immediately pivot your entire conscious focus back to the physical sensation of the warm air leaving your lips. You focus relentlessly on the heavy weight of gravity pulling your heels into the mattress. You focus on the slow mechanical counting. 4 seconds in, 2 seconds hold, 8 seconds out. Your brain will try to pull you back into the panic loop a dozen times. And a dozen times, you coldly, mechanically pivot back to the physical body. You completely starve the anxious thought of the oxygen it desperately needs to survive, which is your emotional reaction. You refuse to engage in the debate. Over time, the sentry realizes that you are utterly ignoring its warnings, and the physical body is actively declaring that the environment is secure. The heavy dose of acetylcholine finally washes over your prefrontal cortex. The sharp, terrifying edges of your anxiety turn soft and dull. The heavy, warm wave of dawn relief begins to pull you down into the mattress in the dead of the night. When you execute these 7 phases together, a fiercely guarded truth emerges. The world told you that you just needed to relax. The world told you to drink warm milk, clear your mind, and stop overthinking. The world was wrong. You do not have a simple mind, and you cannot be cured by simple platitudes. You have a highly evolved, deeply protective nervous system that requires elite tactical communication. You're not a broken machine. You're a complex, beautiful instrument that was temporarily tuned to the frequency of danger. And now you hold the exact manual required to tune it back to the frequency of peace. The surrender paradox, the gravity anchor, the somatic decoy, the alveolar reset, the vagal override, the oculomotor shift, and the cognitive pivot. These are not just mental tricks. These are precise biological commands that speak directly to the oldest, most protective parts of your brain. The next time you find yourself staring into the dark, feeling that familiar electric hum of anxiety vibrating in your chest, I want you to remember this protocol. I want you to remember that you hold the absolute power to hack the sentry. But reading about a biological protocol and actually living it are two entirely different realities. Knowledge without action is just another passing thought in the night. I need to know who is actually going to step into the arena and take control of their own biology. Tonight, when the house goes completely quiet and the shadows stretch across the walls, I want you to execute this exact sequence. And tomorrow morning, when the sun comes up, I want you to come back to this video. Go to the comments and tell me exactly which of the 7 phases felt the most profound for your specific mind. Tell me exactly how your physical body reacted when the heavy armor finally cracked. Claim your victory in the dark, because your documented experience is the ultimate proof that someone else desperately needs to read when they are trapped alone tonight. This is how we build our rare tribe. In our next video, we are going to explore the terrifying, highly specific architecture of the dreams your mind produces when the sentry finally lets its guard down. Subscribe to Nocturnal Mind so you never have to navigate the midnight hours entirely alone. Until next time, remember this. You never had to fight your own mind to find peace. You just had to learn how to guide it safely home.